and it let out this blood-curdling, guttural scream.
On the side of the road, he sees a deer carcass and something eating on it, which he thought was a bear. And as the lights hit it, it stood up. And, like, this gives me chills talking about it. He said it stood up and it had the face of a man.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Bigfoots of America podcast show. This is episode 35. I'm your host, Bryan Sawyer, coming at you. And listen, hey, I have been thinking about this guy ever since we did the first episode with him back a few episodes again. Author David Walker. I couldn't wait to get him back. So let's touch on his book a little bit right now. I'm in a more serious mood today. Been praying about this episode. Want the information to get out there. And David is a wealth of knowledge. He's written this book, and I'm going to try to keep the glare off of it. Supernatural Cryptids, Return of the Nephilim. You can buy this book on Amazon, and today we're going to dig a little bit deeper than we did in episode 1. So, or episode, I'm trying to think which episode he was on. It was a few episodes ago, but part 1, and this is part 2. So let's go ahead and bring David in. David, man, good to have you back, brother.
It's good to be back, man. I had a fun time the first time around.
Without a doubt. I was so excited to have you on. And now, since I've been thinking about it, since then, I'm like, wow, man, this is a heavy subject. I know I don't mean to diminish anything with what I'm about to say, but in a way, this is a type of entertainment. Bigfoot is something you tune into YouTube to get the latest information. A lot of people joke about it back and forth, but there is a very serious storyline to all of this. And I want to dig into that a little bit more. So I'm going to hold up your book one more time, Supernatural Cryptids, Return of the Nephilim. And I've got to start off by asking you a question. And the question is, David, why'd you write this book?
Oh, that's a loaded question. Ever since my first experience, and as I told the whole story, it would take about at least 5 minutes if I shortened it up. But at the end of my story, I was telling them we were following the tracks of this thing, 15 inches long, maybe, I don't know, 7 inches wide, 3 toes at the end of it. And as we followed them, and I was leading the group, I came to the last track, and I'm like, I couldn't see no more. I looked back and I asked my buddy's dad, Lloyd. I said, "Hey man, I can't find no more track." He goes, "You're not a very good tracker, are you, Dave? You should see a lot of tracks up there ahead of you, son. That's a 700 or 800 pound creature we're following." He said, "Let me look." He goes up there. He starts looking around. He's looking around. He goes, "Well, I'll be," He went back to the last track and he knelt down. He says, "Listen, I've been hunting these parts ever since I knew how to grasshopper, and I've never seen nothing like this." He said, "But one thing I do know, tracks don't lie." And he said, "They all tell a story." I said, "Okay, I get you. What story they telling?" Because I said, we can't find no more." He goes, that's a good question. And just kind of gave me a blank stare like, I don't really know what to tell you.
Wow.
And so for 50 years, I've been thinking about what the answer would be. So if I'm following these tracks and they stop and where there should be plenty more across the logging road and a big wide open field, no trees around, where'd the creature go? Did he walk backwards? No, because I was there, and if he walked backwards, he would have walked right back to where we was at. And walking backwards, it doesn't make no sense at all. And especially he would have to track on the same exact track perfectly. That really doesn't really add up. And so
Right.
if he didn't walk backwards, he did go sideways, and there's no more track ahead. Where did he go? He had to have went somewhere. And so this is what led me to write this book, thinking I think everything goes back to the Bible, but Bigfoot's not found in the Bible per se. But if you look at it really close, you can see subtle hints of hybrid type beings. That's where we talk about the Genesis 6-4, the giants, and all that kind of things like that. Nephilim that we talked about in the first podcast. These things may have been very hairy. I mean, they were fallen angels, and I imagine they were pretty mean looking, pretty bad. If I can use the
Right.
term badass, they were badass beings, but badass
Yep.
in a real bad way, not a good way, of course. So,
Without a doubt.
yeah, that's what led me into all this.
Awesome. Well, yeah, too. And then if we think about stories like Gilgamesh, I mean, what was his nemesis? Enkidu?
Uh, yeah, that's a very good point. Enkidu,
Yes.
Enkidu was, they claim, made by the gods, because they found that Gilgamesh was getting a little bit too big for his britches. He was a
Ah,
real mean king, and he ruled his area there in Uruk, which is actually means Iraq. It's in the
right.
area of the Euphrates River. He ruled that area with an iron hand. He was very cruel. People better, if he says jump, you better ask him how high. So anyhow, the gods said we gotta knock him down a peg or two. Let's create a being to do that, and he has to be pretty big too, because this Gilgamesh they claim was 17 and a half feet tall. So if
Oh,
that's
yeah,
the
we've got
case,
that.
I'm guessing that
Yeah, we've
Enkidu
got.
had to be, we're talking 14, 15 feet himself at least.
Yeah, don't we have a statue or something of
Yes,
him like holding a lion? So yeah,
yes, it is in my book, and I believe that's Enkidu. That's either in chapter 2 or chapter 3. I don't really have that pulled up, but I'd have to kind of flip through my book to look at that. I had
yeah.
it.
No, that's okay. I'm looking for it now, man.
Yeah, it's in there, and yeah, he's holding a lion in his left hand, just like you or I would hold a kitty cat. And
Yeah.
so, if have you
Yeah.
found
Here it
it?
is. I got it. Let me pull it up. So it's chapter 4, and then hopefully the folks at home, and I'm sure many of you have seen this online, but here's a picture of that of what we're talking about in case you don't know.
Yeah. And so you look at the guy standing down there at the scale, and that's quite a difference, my friend.
Without a doubt.
So if
That's a
Enkidu would probably come up to, I'm guessing, probably come up to his shoulders at least, or close
you know
to it.
what,
Maybe,
David?
huh?
David, that's the first time I'm sorry to interrupt. I am shocked. This is the first time I've seen a scale representation of a normal sized man. I didn't realize that this statue or this depiction carved in stone is life size. It's actual size.
Yes. So you have a scale there with a regular guy standing there, and he's looking up at this statue, which is 17 and a half, 18 feet tall. And it's like, whoa, we're talking definitely Nephilim, or maybe, yeah, Nephilim for sure, for sure.
Yeah,
And they
this is
claim that
amazing.
Gilgamesh was two-thirds God and one-third man. Well, humankind, one-third, from his mother's side, and two-thirds God. And there were some shady things happening back there, Brian. If you When you read that chapter, you're going to find out that when he built, this was after the flood, and remember the giants returned after the flood as they were before the flood. And the flood was God's main reason, I believe, anyhow. So do a lot of others, that God brought the flood on. Because if it was just for evil people, we'd be destroyed today. We would be destroyed if it was just for evilness. I believe it was because of the corruption of the human gene pool that the flood God wiped the whole slate clean. He said, "Okay, hey, the devil got his, he got I gave him his best shot, but I'm gonna wipe the slate clean, then see what he can do." Well, they come back again. Whether that was through another um, incursion of fallen angels or angels that lusted after the woman, or whether that was through the first batch, which had a dormant seed growing in mankind that wasn't destroyed, obviously, because of the flood, but it passed through the gene pool of not per se Noah, but maybe the wives that were attached to his sons. We don't really know. That's just a gesture. And no theologian is going to knows exactly, but those are two predominating theories. Either that was a gigantism, gene that was kind of slowly crept through the gene pool, or there was a step, maybe perhaps another second incursion of angels.
Wow. Hey, real quick, this is for me. Is Nimrod or was Nimrod and Gilgamesh the same person, or was Gilgamesh like a son-in-law or something? I can't remember. Or
Yeah,
a nephew.
it says, and again, these are things that are not set in stone, but it's my belief through my research that and other authors have also vouched this opinion that they believe he was the same. It was the same person because Nimrod ruled in the same exact area. Nimrod was
Okay.
considered a god.
Okay.
Nimrod was called the mighty hunter before the Lord. He was
Okay.
he was esteemed a mighty man, and the word for him, the mighty, means I think it's Hibarim or something like that, which means valiant one, mighty. The same word used to describe the Nephilim giants in Genesis 6:4.
Okay. Okay. So there is a connection there. We're not exactly sure whether they're the same person. Maybe the same person with different names and different cultures.
Yeah,
Because
the
around
name.
that time,
Yeah, the
the
name
Tower of
because of the
Babel happened.
yes, exactly. The Tower of
Okay.
Babel, and God confusing, making all these different languages, and so everybody described this man through their own tongue, and so doing that, it's going to appear differently, spelled differently, but they're talking about the same God.
Gotcha. Gotcha. What were the pyramids about? What was the Tower of Babel was a ziggurat, right? And
Yes.
then we find these pyramid type structures all over the world now. What's the connection there?
There is, and you are right, and still to this very day, pyramids are they have found them all over the world. I'm not 100% up on the power of the pyramid, but I do know, according to the information I have derived, they can produce. They were actually created to produce a generating power source. They were to establish something like a power grid, if I'm saying that right. Like
Hmm.
and they were all aimed at the celestial coordinate. And
Wow.
so because they were fallen angels, and Lucifer's a fallen angel too, obviously. Um, he doesn't have the same power he used to have, and neither do
Okay.
the other angels. So they have to get an alternative, if I can use that word, an alternative power source. And they found out that by using the pyramid shape, if they can aim that at the stars, something in their ancient knowledge about astronomy and astrology kicked in, and it would give them. I hope I'm not stepping outside the lines I'm supposed to, but it would give them power to be able to jump off grid if they had to. And
Wow.
that's exactly
Wow.
what they did during the flood. They jumped off grid, Brian.
Wow, good stuff, David. I love hearing this because it's a slightly different narrative. I've also heard that pyramids were a place where the gods, we know, fallen angels, would come down and meet man. And so the pyramid, I've also heard that the Garden of Eden was actually also on a mountain. So that's representative of the gods coming down. And so it was also a meeting place. Pyramids were a meeting place for the humans on earth to meet with the gods who then, if I'm correct, David, may be the reason we have all these different types of religions around the world. It's the gods coming down and meeting the people and then, you know, basically lying and saying they are gods from far off galaxies and maybe they seeded us. I mean, I know a new narrative coming out is that like the gray aliens and all that, are going to say, hey, we're you from the future. We seeded you. Basically, it's to cause confusion and chaos away from the gospel of Jesus Christ, away from the focus of Jesus, and to
Yes.
destroy God's narrative. And I think God just wanted to have a family. He wanted to have people he loved. He wasn't surprised when so many of the angels fell. He's had this plan. God formulated this whole plan, and he rolled it up into a ball and he threw it out, and it has its own energy to unfold before us, and we just have a choice whether or not we're going to serve the one true God through Jesus Christ, or whether we're going to serve all these other narratives. What are your thoughts on that? That the
My
pyramids
thoughts are
have
you hit the net.
generated.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, man. And that's the thing is that every single person, every single being with a breath of, well, not the animals. I mean, individual. So I'm talking angels. I'm talking the giants. I'm talking all. Everyone has a choice, freedom of choice. A lot of people used to say, "Oh, the angels they had to serve God. They didn't have no other choice." Wrong, because the narrative in Genesis proves that theory wrong. They had a choice, and they chose, some of them became enamored with the beauty of woman. Of course, uh, every red-blooded man can admit to that particular thing right there. We've all been
Sure.
there, if I can say that because there are beautiful women out there. And if what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So with that being said, are the angels any different?
Oh, exactly.
Apparently,
I'm
apparently not.
right. I'm looking it up right now because you made me think of the verse um, where it talks about a specific group of angels left their first estate. I'm trying to find the Bible verse
You're
on that.
talking about Jude, verses 6 and 7.
Yeah, chapter 1, 6 and 7. Yeah, yeah. So yes, they had a choice. Now, with all that said, what we're doing is we're building a foundation as to why we have all these different cryptid and paranormal beings. So now, Gilgamesh is evidence of giants of Genesis 6, that there were giants in those days, that the 200 angels came down to Mount Hermon, started getting it on with all different sorts of creatures. And so here's my question. Here's what I don't know, David. And you don't necessarily have the answer, but what are your thoughts on it? Did the angels know they could procreate? And they did this on purpose, or they fell in love with the women, lusted after them, and then found out they could procreate. And then once they realized judgment was coming down on them, decided to pervert all of God's creation. What are your thoughts?
Very, very excellent question, man. You have really thought this out. This is my thoughts on that. Is that they not only knew what they were doing, they found out a way, because angels in their present state cannot procreate. So if with that being said, what do they have to do, Brian? If that's the case, they have to change themselves into something that can procreate. And what the Bible
Mm.
say about the devil? It says that even the devil himself can transform himself into an angel of light. And if that's the case, he says, even so doth his ministers are able to transform themselves into different types of beings. So therefore, these are transformers. They're not, they just like, how about the shapeshifter? How about a shapeshifter? It's just about exactly like that. They have that. They're supernatural. Remember, they're supernatural. We might think, oh, I like to be Frankenstein. Well, we can't really like change ourselves into a monster, but those beings that are supernatural have that ability, and they did that in order to procreate with the woman. And I believe that there was a law that was never spoken that we don't know of. I believe it was a heavenly law that they knew to do this thing, they would have to go outside of their original. their original estate, their first estate. They would have to become something else. And I believe that if they knew that if they actually did this, that there was no turning back.
Right.
Kind
Okay.
kind of thinking like Superman and how he went into that chamber and he hit that button and they said, now remember, once you become human, you can't become immortal again. And he was willing to take that, remember, and hit that button, and so he became
Oh yeah.
human.
Oh
It
yeah.
was
And
just
let
like
me
that. Once
just
that decision is made, there was now he was able to turn back in the show, of course, because it's Hollywood. But in the reality of things, there was no turning back for the angels. There was no forgiveness for them.
Gotcha. All right. So, and then also, I just want to support this with some documentation, literature in the Bible. Hebrews 13:2 confirms it in another way. It says, be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unaware. So they have the ability to go from spiritual beings into physical
Mm,
beings.
yes, that hit me
And
real
we have,
cold. That hit me
oh,
cold,
brother,
Eddie.
and this is where I get revved up. And I try not to be too harsh on our westernized Christianity, how we've been taught, because really it's just the truth of the gospel is really all we need. But we need to study to show ourselves approved. We need to answer the why questions as to why Jesus came. Yes, he came to seek out and save the lost, but it also says that he also came to destroy the works of the devil and all of his crew. So
Come on
that's what
now.
this is all about. Oh, yeah. And that's what this is all about. So now let's keep on that narrative. Oh, I got to say something really quick. And this is exactly how I wanted this episode to go, kind of evolve. I wanted to point out that I just recently, can you stay right there? I'm gonna grab something and you're gonna laugh. So I've got this podcast show here, and you mentioned Superman.
There you go,
So
buddy.
so
You're right. I did laugh.
well, guess what I found out? What is Superman's name? Kal-El? Kal-El? If you go back the Phoenician paganism, if you go back to some of the old gods, their names always had an el in it, an l, Bulel. And I don't have all the documentation because I'm new at discovering this. So, oh my gosh, David, like you were inspired to write this book. Were all the comics just see now here's a conspiracy theory. I'm an actor here in Detroit. I've told you this before. When Hollywood comes to town, a lot of times I'll get on the set. I was on the set for 2 weeks with Batman versus Superman. I met Ben Affleck. I met Henry Cavill. I met Gal Gadot. I met Zack Snyder. Okay. In my past, I almost before that, David, I don't know if you know, I was about to sign a record deal until I had an entity walk through a portal into my living room and try to make the deal with the devil with me for a record contract. I denied that. Started going to church full time after that. My grandfather was a Baptist minister. I had that Christianity in the family, but that was the catapult to get my butt back into church and start studying this. That, oh my gosh, an entity just walked through a portal in my living room and offered me a record deal, offered me to
Mm,
sign a deal with the devil. Okay, so there are powers that be. I recently heard, and the folks at home have heard this before, but Steven Spielberg had a briefing by the CIA, and out of that briefing came two movies: Close Encounters of the Third Kind and E.T. Well, one of the differences was E.T. in the movie is a friendly little guy who heals you with his finger. Well, in reality, the CIA briefing, that finger disintegrated you. It boiled you down to nothing. It was a weapon. So CIA feeds Hollywood, and out of that, and I made a post recently on the social media, is that the CIA feeds Hollywood information, and out of this information come certain TV shows. Bigfoot, $6 million Man, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Let's talk about Stargate. Let's talk about some of these crazy movies and TV
yeah.
shows where
Yeah. You
this is
got
where a lot of
Yeah, you got Supernatural, and then before Supernatural came on, you had a show, my favorite, called Smallville.
There you go. So Superman, back to that. His name is Kal-El. Well, that L comes from the pagan god names who are the fallen angels back in the day. Research it. There's books and DVDs. I'm going to hold up one for the folks at home. Derek Gilbert. You know, I've been with Derek on his podcast show. Talked to Derek a few times. He's got this DVD in a book called The Return of Saturn, and this does a lot of connecting to the old gods. Or you've got The Return of the Gods. I don't have it with me. James Caan. Have you heard of that book? So all of this connects. And so my thought was, going back to Superman, was how movies are inspired or dictated by information given by the CIA, or how in the spiritual realm I was offered a deal with the devil record contract. These guys and people at home might hate me for this, but this is a question. I'm not saying it's true, but how did the guy who first came up with the idea of Superman come up with his name, Kal-El? Did he have a dream one night? Did he have a vision one night about a supernatural being from another world that could come and save the world? See, now, I've also heard that, oh, it's just a representation of Jesus. Okay, fine. But why is his name Kal-El? That goes into paganism. So all I'm saying to everybody out there, watch out, do some studying. There are some nefarious connections out there. You know, that's why the Bible says study to show yourself approved. All right, so now we're going to get back to Bigfoot. We talked about Gilgamesh. I'm sorry I'm throwing all this at you. I've been waiting for you. I'm so excited. Now, I recently saw, so behind me, I've got Beowulf up there. I've got like a knife and a plaque back here. I got another plaque over here. I love the story of Beowulf, and I never really thought of anything until recently. I came across a picture of what somebody thought Grendel, Beowulf's nemesis Grendel, might look like. And what did it look like, David? It looked like it looked like a Bigfoot. It's a giant.
Amazing. This information that we're covering, Brian, I got goose pimples underneath my legs, and I've never had them underneath my legs before. Because let me just stop real quick. Hold on to that Grindel so I don't forget it. I want to go
Right,
back
right.
real quick to your Kylel.
Yes.
That name is connected with the original name. Now, the Bible says Lucifer, but he had a few different names, and among those pagan names, his original name was called Kylel.
My goodness.
I'm about ready to jump out of the chair and take off for running.
This is what I'm talking about, David. Look, everybody out there who's listening, we're not here to spoil your dreams and fantasies and all that. What we are trying to do is bring truth into the narrative. Because here's how the enemy looks at it. He doesn't have to get you today. He can take your whole lifetime. And as I've said this before, if you're walking a straight path to the Lord, if he can knock you off a little bit, and then knock you off a little bit more, you're not making it. If he can dilute the truth of the gospel and really the holiness of Jesus Christ as the
Mm,
only begotten Son of the Father,
come
the
on,
one
brother.
who
Come
is
on.
actually the one who is actually Father in the incarnate flesh. Okay, he wasn't created by God. He's not the son. He's not the brother of Satan. He is actually God in the flesh. God came down, and we don't fully understand. I tell my boys, hey, just look, we'll never fully understand. Just look at a pie or a cake, cut it into three pieces. It's the same pie with three different segments to it. Now, that's the best way I can tell my boys so they understand, but we'll never grasp the full understanding. I just want to differentiate that Jesus is holy. He is the only
Mm,
begotten Son
yeah.
of Jesus, of the living Father. Um, Even the demons recognized him and said, wait a minute, you're the Son of God. Have you come to torment us before our time? So I always want to promote the holiness and the deity of Jesus Christ. That's number one. And
Yeah.
then when you do that, you understand how everything else falls underneath. You understand that, boy, I'm really going off today, David. You understand how, yeah, a narrative like Superman could have been influenced by Satan and his crew just to dilute or get you looking away from Jesus and maybe onto another type of savior or
Exactly.
hero.
And another thing, Brian, if you notice, when we've been talking a little bit about demons here. Um, these greys and aliens today, insectoids or reptilians, all these things that we call aliens, they never ever attack any other form of religion except Christianity and specifically Jesus Christ. When he is mentioned, they go haywire and they go into denial and they say, no, we were your creator. We were your creators. And so why do they only attack one particular individual? And could it be that they attack him because they know he's the one that's going to be dishing out their judgment someday?
Mm. They, whoa,
Woo!
whoa,
Man, I'm about ready to take off
whoa.
again.
There's a, you know what? Oh man, see now that hit home with me because that would encompass an anger and a bitterness. Yes, and then you're accusing the accuser of the brethren. That's
Come on
another
now.
reason
Come
why
on.
that hate and that anger in Satan's heart, he becomes an accuser of the brethren because he has been rejected. He was warned, he was told, and he still did what he wanted to do. He wanted, and his excuse, let me tell you something. Boy, we're going on a tangent today. Satan's excuse.
We're going to have another episode.
And we'll get back to the Bigfoots and the cryptids in a second. But Satan's excuse is that, well, I don't want to live under God's system. I
Nope.
want to be free. I want to live. And he wants to take everybody out there down with him. Now, I posed a question to a buddy of mine who's not a Christian. He came at me, what do you believe in Christianity? And I said, well, tell you what, I'm going to answer you with a question. I said, why do you drive to work every day and you obey every stop sign and every red light? I said, why do you do that? And he said, I don't want to kill people and I don't want to get a ticket. And I said, oh, so you do have love because you care about other people. I said, but you obey a government that only has so much power. You know, this is a petition of God to Job about the behemoth or the Tyrannosaurus Rex, you know, some say type creature, where he said, "You fear this creature, but you don't fear me." Um, you know, to my friend, I'm saying, you fear the government. You're afraid to stop. You know, you're afraid you're going to get a ticket from a stop sign or a red light running them, but you're not afraid of eternal damnation in hell. Now, we know that hell and the lake of fire were made for the devil and his crew, but if we're going to act like them, then we're going to be sent there. So my petition to people is first of all, God loves you. God loves you and he wants a family. Yes, we had no choice in being born, but he is the way, the truth, and the life, and he does love us more than anyone else. But there's a flip side to that coin. And we're starting to see the effects of that bitterness, that anger from Satan coming into the world. Wars and rumors of wars. You know, Russia doesn't want to make peace right now. Charlie Kirk just got shot. You know, there is a hatred for anyone who's speaking truth. So my
Yeah.
petition is, look, God is the way, the truth, and the life. He loves you more than anyone else. Don't listen to the earthly narratives. Listen to God. Dig into the Bible. Discover that love story that God has through Jesus Christ for us. That God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. And that's what it's all about. I wouldn't give my sons, either of my sons, for anyone, but God did. So it's really based on love. But because the devil and his crew have defected, we have all these other things. Now, people out there would say, well, why would God let that happen? To me, it's easy, David. we have to have a free will. And if we can't know what's right and wrong, if we don't have examples of what's right and wrong and make our own choices, we don't have a free will. We're just a bunch of robots. And then God truly doesn't have a family. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just getting ready to say the same exact thing you said. If we don't have a free will, we're just a bunch of robots. If there was going to be any robots, the angels would have been robots because they walked right they walked right past him and had conversations with him and they praised his holy name and in Job Job 38 verse 9, I believe it is. He said that, when he created the world, that all the stars and all the morning stars and the stars sang together and they worshiped the creator for creating the earth. These stars and morning stars, again, stars is a symbolism in the Bible of angelic being, angels, because they shine. They were created by God. They shine. They were in the very presence of God. Remember when Moses was in the presence of God, how his face shone so much that they had to put a veil over his face because they couldn't look at him. It was like a blinding light. Well, these angels are light beings. Their very essence is light, and that's why these angels, I believe, didn't have no grace because they went from being seeing him face to face to turning around and walking away from him and rebelling against him and choosing their own way instead of his way. And that didn't sit too well with God. It's just like if you have a kid and you raise them real good, you provide for them, you teach them the right way, and all of a sudden they just say, "You don't mean nothing to me." I saw a Facebook post a couple of days ago, and this guy was ranting to his father, and he said, "You ain't nothing. I don't even know you. You won't let me do what I want, and you won't take my phone away. I don't even know you." And started cursing at him and calling him names. And the father said, "Look, son, I did this for you. I did that for you." He said, "You didn't do jack crap for me." And it just made me think of what Paul said on that day. There'll be scoffers and there'll be people that will deny him and be ungrateful, unholy. And this son was really ungrateful toward his father and very disrespectful. And man, so imagine this is the same kind of feeling that God had toward the angels. It's just like they were cussing him and telling him, "You ain't nothing. We don't have to follow you. We got somebody else to follow. We're going to follow the devil. We're going to follow Lucifer, or we're going to follow Hillel. We're going to follow him. He knows the true way." And when they turned their backs on him, it really grieved God to his heart. And he knew he had to cut him off.
Mm, good stuff. So you think, well, it's evident they got too full of themselves. They got looking at
Yeah.
themselves in the mirror and they confuse. Here's my thing, they confuse God's kindness for weakness. And God is not
Oh
a weak
boy, is
God.
that good? That's a great message. Yeah, and how many times does that happen? Some people say just because you're kind, that does not mean you're weak. It means you got that nature. But if that nature is trampled on, that real great kindness can turn into real great wrath.
Oh yeah, it's like I tell my boys too. I've got two sons, and I make this analogy. I say, "Hey, I've had you two sons." I said, "What's going to happen if one of you turns evil and starts hurting the other son, and even to the point of death or close to the point of death?" I said, "Doesn't there come a point in time when I need to step in for justice, for holiness' sake, for what's right?" And so, everyone, God is patient, He is loving, He is long suffering, He is giving us every chance possible. But yes, He's coming back. The hammer is coming down. Time is short. Everything that's going on in the world right now has been talked about, has been prophesied about in the Bible. If you don't know that, now here's the harsh side of me: you're not studying to show yourself approved. You are not in the Bible. You are making the Bible and you are making Christianity the way you want it to be, rather than how it is meant and presented to be by God the Father.
Yes.
All right, so
Amen.
that's heavy, man. We got
Let
on
me
that
let me let,
tangent.
let me read you. If we're good, we're probably close to the end of this one, but let me read you one pair. And when I read it, you're going to be like, "Yep." We're on the same page, brother. This is how I ended my book on my supernatural conclusion. I said, let's be real, shall we? I said, folks, if even a fourth of these eyewitnesses to the cryptids are valid, and they really have seen something weird and strange, in the fields and forests of our planet, then the Nephilim are not going to return. They already have.
Mm.
What we are witnessing then is only a prelude to what will occur once the rapture takes place and the church vacates this planet. All hell will break loose at that time, just as it did in Noah's day. The
Mm.
supernatural will become natural, and a flood of evil beings and giants will once again take over and rule this planet for a short period of time. The devil will be in full control and rule over the entire world via the Antichrist, his main man, and his crony, the false prophet. If you want to escape this encompassing evil, you can by giving your heart and life to Jesus Christ today and accepting him as your Lord and Savior. Do it now before it's everlastingly too late. Jesus Christ is about to come down on this earth and take care of business as prophesied in the book of Revelation at his second coming. However, this time he won't be coming to die on the cross. This time he's coming to rule and reign as King of Kings and Lord of Lords.
Amen. Amen, brother. Um, what page is that at? I'm looking in your book once again, everybody. I'm not quite ready to wrap it up yet, but we're gonna show your book one more time. Supernatural Cryptids: Return of the Nephilim. Get this book. This is about really it's why all of this stuff is going on. It's why I saw a fairy in my house. It's why I heard Bigfoot howl just last week. It's why there's all these different types of entities. We've been looking for a reason. A lot of people don't want to accept the biblical narrative, and that's your free will choice. But, dude, I gotta jump back into it for a minute because we still got a little bit of time left. Um, let's talk about so we're talking about Beowulf and Grendel. What I wanted to talk about is the evidence along the way that confirms the biblical narrative. We've talked about Gilgamesh, a giant. We're talking about Grendel, a Beowulf. Let's go down a little
How
bit
about
farther.
Enkidu too? Enkidu.
Yes, Enkidu, the nemesis who later became the friend of Gilgamesh, right?
Yes.
So now, so now, what's some other evidence, David? Well, we were talking about it earlier. We're talking about the mound builders. A few weeks ago, I was out at the Serpent Mound. There is evidence and there's a narrative out there that after the Israelites came in to the promised land, that they chased out a bunch of the giant tribes, the Amalekites, the Canaanites, and some of those giants fled. Whichever ones weren't killed, they fled to the island of Sardinia, where we have giant bones have been found there, and then also to the Americas. So I was at the Serpent Mound. I was in awe. I had heard about an obelisk that used to be there. There were ceremonies and sacrifices performed, maybe in the center of that egg or seed, whatever you want to call it, and was pushed off the cliff by the people who found it. And I found that obelisk, brother. I don't know if you've seen that episode. I walked down on the back trail down to the bottom of that cliff, and
Yeah, I
I
saw it.
found
I
that
saw it.
obelisk. So, you've got a whole chapter in your book, man. So, I just had it, lost it going back. The Serpent Mound. So let's talk about the mound builders. And here it is, part three, chapter 7, part 3, Giants, the Mound Builders. So let's talk about that. What are your thoughts on places like the Serpent Mound?
Well, they claim that the Serpent Mound isn't that old. That it's the youngest of all the mounds. However, they're doing this thing on the carbon dating, and they carbon dated it to like I think it's 200 or something like that, 2 or 300. No, 900 A.D. But another one of the carbon dates was 300 BC. So I'm saying this, Brian. You guys can't get your story straight. What is it? 900 AD, 300 BC, or is it an older date?
Mm.
And these other mounds that were made in the form of a snake, serpent, are found over there, and I think there's one in the Middle East, and there's also one in New England. And I'm not talking about the I'm not talking about the famous one. What's that one called? The real famous one?
Stonehenge.
Stone. I'm
Stonehenge.
not talking about Stone. Yeah, I'm talking about other different. There's several different mounds around, and not just in the United States. There are mounds across the world. But the
And I
phenomenon
am
was
aware of.
mostly in the United States because that's where a lot of these giants ended up at, and that's why I want to really key on what you did. I'm glad we're talking about the serpent mound because there's a ton of mounds in Ohio. Why Ohio? And anybody that knows anything about Tuscarawas County, which is the area I happen to live in, there's a
Really?
real heavy, like spirit. Not heavy. I'll put that. Take that back. There's a real heaviness to the area. Many people have remarked about it. Um, do you think that might have any type of link or association with all these mounds in Ohio? And it's underneath that, the mounds in Newark, the Octagon Mound, another mound and all these mounds, like I said before, the mounds as well as pyramids are actually celestial coordinated. It's that little outlet to that place in the heavens to give them a little bit extra push, to give them more energy, to give them more power because they've been stripped of their power. So they need to be able to connect with the heavenly stars and constellations to be able to get some of that power back. And I believe that's what's going on here with the mounds. And I also believe in uh, heavenly the heavenly beings that are over. Remember the prince of Persia in the Bible, in Daniel, talks about there's these some of these fallen angels aren't just like they weren't just all giants, or they weren't Bigfoot, or they weren't all they may some of them may be Bigfoot and giants and even fallen angels, the ones that actually came down to this earth on top of the mountain with the woman and stuff. And Mount Hermon in Israel is another prime example where they met right there. Funny that we mentioned Mount Hermon because that's where Jesus took his disciples up and he was transfigured before them. He's standing right above what literally is called in the Hebrew and in the Israelite the gates of hell. Remember when he made that statement? Peter,
Yes.
you're a stone, he said, and I'm the rock. And he said, and upon this rock, pointing to himself, the gates of hell shall not prevail against it because I'm going to build my church on it. I'm building my church on myself, and hell's not going to be able to stop me. He said that standing right close, right beside the gates of hell. Now,
Wow.
getting back to the, ain't that cool? Ain't that cool stuff? Whew.
Oh, it's
So we're
amazing.
talking
So
about
he was.
principalities. Ephesians 6, verse what? Is Ephesians 6, verse 12. Talks about what these powers are, these powers of these rulers of the darkness of this world, spiritual wickedness in high places. We're talking about principalities. We're talking about beings that you can't see with your physical eyes.
Hmm.
And so
Yeah,
I
there's.
believe that these mounds, the serpent mound was made. This is what I believe. And again, I maybe you can prove me wrong. And if so, that's okay. I've been wrong before, but I think this mound was made more in tune with maybe 2,000 years BC. That would be mine because all these other mounds were made at that exact time period that were serpent mounds. And so, if that is the case, then the Nephilim built that mound instead of so-called Indians, or the giants built that mound. And the Indians themselves claim that they say, we didn't build these mounds. We have nothing to do with these mounds. Ask L.A. Marzulli. He'll tell you the Indians all say, we didn't build the mound. But science and history says, yeah, they did because we found some arrowheads in them. And we found a couple Tommyhawks. And therefore, the Indians had to made them. I don't believe that. I believe they were stuff that they came along a little bit afterwards. They were the next the civilization, and therefore some of their craft got buried with the giants, and the giants even interacted with the Indians. They had wars with them. When you go back in
Yeah.
their oral traditions, you'll find that out. And so, let's get back to the serpent itself, because I'm covering so much ground. I'm covering it too fast. I'd like to slow down, but I got so many thoughts, Brian, coming into my head. It's just like, whoa, wait a minute. I got to feel these things. You know what I'm saying?
Well, let me
Okay,
say this.
so
Let me say this. I do
sure.
believe, after being out there a couple of times and just looking at everything, I do believe the Serpent Mound in Ohio, Peebles, Ohio, is an effigy, but also a burial mound. And that there could have been sacrifices and ceremonies there to worship the great plumed serpent.
There you
And
go.
that's what that serpent mound represents. That snake or serpent swallowing the egg or the seed. And people go, well, what are you talking about? Well, this all correlates with Genesis 3:15. And God says, and I will put enmity between thee and the woman, between thy seed and her seed, and it shall bruise your head, thy head, and it shall bruise his heel. All right, so that in rebellion, if it was made by the giants, is showing the serpent on the summer solstice, is showing the serpent eating the egg, conquering the seed of God. Well, we know that's not going to happen, but they want to keep believing. The fallen realm wants to keep believing in a false narrative. They want to keep believing that Satan will overcome. And so they worship the great plumed serpent, whether it be Satan or Lucifer. I've also heard a narrative where Lucifer and Shemiyaza might be the same being, and Satan and Lucifer are two different. Who knows? It's all the fallen realm. And so these giants who left the promised land, got chased out, they're building these mounds, but they're holding on to the fact that someday the serpent will overcome the seed. I don't believe it. No, we know that's not the truth. What are your thoughts?
100%. Yeah, the seed, that seed is just like he said in Genesis 3:15. God actually declared war. Now he didn't. You don't see that God declared war right up over those verses in your King James version of the Bible. You ain't gonna see that, but that's what he really did. That's what he declared war with the evil one. He said, "Okay, so you have a serp. You have a serp. You have won back the world from man. I gave it to man, but you, fair and square, you got him to fall." So the world is yours for the time being. But I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, son. I'm going to put war. I'm creating war right now, and at the end, my son, my that seed of the woman that you fooled, he's gonna get you. He's gonna turn the tables on you, and you're gonna have your head crushed. But in the same context, you'll be able to hurt him too. That's all God said. God said, "I'm going to win the war." That there's no other course of the matter. I'm going to win it.
Right,
And
right,
but Satan is so delusional. He is so delusional that he really believes, even to this very day, even after having his head crushed, he still thinks he can win the war. And so God's going to say, "I'll tell you what I'm going to do, son. We're going to have a little battle. It's going to be called Armageddon. And I want to let you bring all the people of the earth to help you, plus all your demons and all your cronies, your fallen angels, whatever case, whoever you can bring, your giant, bring them on. We're going to have a battle, and we're going to see who's going to win." And the Bible says that day will last one day. It won't be darkness, and it won't be light. It'll be like almost like an evening type of cat. It'll last one day. He said in 24 hours, the rider on the white horse is going to destroy them all, and the kingdom is going to become the Lord's.
wow, wow. Well, it's going to happen, people. So whether you believe it or not, the old Ripley's "believe it or not" saying, "Yep." Whether you believe it or not, it's going to happen. And Satan, I mean, he must be something powerful and amazing if he had enough gumption to fool one third of the angels into following him. So he was made for a purpose. So God, remember, God wasn't created, he created the devil, and there's a purpose for that. But stay true to the Lord, stay true to Jesus Christ, and that's the avenue. Hey, I wanted to point out one more thing I just found out recently is that the location of the serpent mound, the location of the serpent mound in Peebles, Ohio, is also a meteorite impact site. Did you know that?
Yes, I did.
What are your thoughts on that?
That's that I believe that there's a connection there. There's definitely a connection. And these meteors, if you remember how Smallville went, remember he had the meters, and during that meteor shower, they had that green stuff called kryptonite. And every time Superman got close to the kryptonite, he couldn't, his powers were gone. Okay,
Oh my goodness. I
huh?
never thought of that connection. Man.
So meteorite. There's something there, and maybe that was also Brian, a source of power for the Giants.
Okay. And we know that also correlates to something that's used by God to judge the world. We know Sodom and Gomorrah, they now believe that that happened because a meteor came and exploded just above and rained down fire and brimstone. So I'm wondering, so my thoughts now on the Serpent Mound were, was this a really bad location? And God took it out with a meteorite, and out of rebellion, they put up this serpent mound to say, "Hey, we're still here," to mock God. So there is a deep, dark history about that location.
Oh yeah, and I believe now Fritz Zimmerman, who has visited several of these mound sites, Fritz Zimmerman said that on top of all the mound sites, you're gonna love this one, Brian. He said he has seen several what he calls fairies on top of the
Oh,
mound sites. So are we talking spirits? Are we talking gateways to other dimensions, supernaturally wise? Remember who the fairies are. They're the fallen angels who were loyal to Lucifer.
wow. Yeah, I had that fairy encounter, and real quick, what did it say to me? I've heard about you. And then once I caught eye contact with it and it realized that I was watching it, and then out of my mouth said, I can see you, right? It zipped across, it took off full of fear into that junction box with a spark and a pop. Very, very interesting. All right, I had something else on my mind. I'm trying to bring it back. Man, that's crazy. The reality of these creatures. So you've got to reconcile that you're not crazy when you see Bigfoot. Uh, you're not crazy when you see a fairy. You have to, and here's the answer, people, bring it under the umbrella of the biblical narrative. Now, I remembered what I was going to talk about. We're going to dive into something else. We still got a little bit of time left. I love talking with you, brother. We've talked about Timothy Alberino. He's a leader in the field, well versed, a great oral presentator. So I want to read some of the things that he has pulled out of the Book of the Giants. Um, and so I always try to back up. People, were you guys just pulling this information out of your rear end, or what? No, we are. It says in the last days they shall increase in knowledge, and I don't believe that has to do with just technology and computers and AI and all of that. No, it's an understanding of the whole narrative of the Bible. And so here we go. I want to read some of this. 200 angelic beings called Watchers made a pact to defy God and descend to the earth in the days of Jared. They descended upon Mount Haran. They took human wives and had sexual intercourse with them. This is from the Book of the Giants, that is from the Book of Enoch, found with the Dead Sea Scrolls. Correct, David? Is that correct?
That's correct, and also aligned perfectly with the Genesis 6:4 narrative.
Okay. Then it goes on to say their wives gave birth to hybrid giants. The Watchers taught their wives and children the secrets of heaven, and the human race was beguiled by the forbidden knowledge. The giants, the offspring of the women and the fallen angels, the Watchers, began to rule over the inhabitants of the earth. The Watchers then chose animals from diverse species, 200 of each kind, in order to copulate with them and progenerate genetic apparitions. The animals conceived hybrid monsters according to the respective species. Nearly all of life on the planet became genetically corrupted and flesh eating. The giants and the monsters terrorized the earth and devoured the human race. Then the giants began to have foreboding dreams and visions that deeply troubled them. They decided to seek out Enoch to interpret their dreams. Enoch presents them with a copy of the tablet addressed to the Watchers, pronouncing a terrible judgment from God upon them, their wives, and their children. The giants are in denial concerning their inevitable fate. The Watchers come to the assembly of all their offspring with great sorrow and weeping, verifying the terrible judgment written on the tablets. The giants now. The giants, enticed by an angel of heaven, make war with one another and annihilate themselves. The giants are bound by the angels of heaven or the watchers, excuse me, the watchers are bound by the angels of heaven and imprisoned in the abyss. So there we have it. In a nutshell, 200 angels come down to Mount Hermon. They start copulating, progenerating all these different types of giants with their human wives, and then they get it on with all different sorts of species of animals, start creating monsters, all of that. Because they start devouring the earth and mankind, God pronounces and all their wickedness, and the human race starts becoming genetically impure. They approach Enoch, who's genetically pure, and about their troubling dreams, and Enoch pronounces the judgment that's written on these tablets. After that, I heard a narrative that the clash of the titans could be that part of the judgment where an angel comes down and entices the wicked giants to fight each other till the death. I heard that that could be where the term clash of the titans came from, is that part of the judgment from God is that these watchers' children, aka the giants and monsters, have to kill each other, and these watchers just have to sit helpless and watch their offspring kill one another. What are your thoughts on that? That was a whole mouthful. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, obviously, Timothy read. You read what Timothy wrote, or he read also from the book of Giants. Was it, or was it Enoch, or one of the two?
Yeah, the book of Giants, which is in along with the book of Enoch that was
Yeah,
found with the Dead Sea
they're very
Scroll.
close. They're very close because I believe they were both inspired. So if they're both inspired by God, they're not going to be, because they got different writers. They're going to be, say things just a little bit differently, but the whole story lines up perfectly. With
Yeah,
like you said, with the biblical narrative, they all do.
yeah.
They're said a little bit different. If there's five people in a room and we're all talking about the story of the crucifixion, we're probably all going to tell it a little bit differently. But it's gonna be the story of the crucifixion.
Right, right. And then the final thing said is the great flood destroys all life on earth except Noah, his two sons, and their wives, which then you brought in the aspect. We know that Noah and his sons were genetically pure, but his wives may have carried some tainted DNA, which spawned another incursion of giants. Or, I don't know. I heard also that the Tower of Babel angels who were given authority over, the 70 nations, they also turned and allowed humans to worship them. And then God kept, of course, Israel
I
for his
I do
portion.
like I really like that narrative right there, Brian, and I'll tell you why. There is something, and I got the information in my book that talks about the kings of the earth. It says, and this kind of makes me think about my favorite show, which is I got the guy's face. Where it says kings of the universe. Oh, what that
Oh,
show?
Masters of the Universe, He Man?
Nah, yeah, 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 yeah. It makes me think of that show there because they got power, and on the show he said there can only be one. There can only be one of us left, and in essence, that's what's happening in the biblical narrative. There can only be one. What they say about God? The Lord our God is one God. There can only be one, and that's why we bow and worship Him and serve our Creator. That's exactly why. There can
Fantastic.
only be one. But anyhow, I'm just going off here. I'm going off there because I'm getting so excited. I just feel the spirit of God really moving on, and I hope the listeners can feel the spirit of God moving on them too. And I hope they come to the same saving knowledge of Jesus Christ that you and I have come to. And I do believe I speak for you too. We are not perfect. We're not saying we're perfect.
No.
We're sinners saved by grace. Do we still stand? Yeah, we do. But long as we go back to Him and say, Lord, please forgive us. We're not perfect. We're flawed.
Right. Right.
But
And
but
I
we
think
know who to go to, and that's what just like little birdies going underneath the feathers of their mommy, and to get warm and to be safe, and she protects them there. Anyhow,
awesome. No, that's wonderful. It's our job not to just say that Bigfoot exists. Our job is also to say why Bigfoot exists. There are explanations for Bigfoot, UFOs, all of this. You know what, David? I'm going to have you back again, brother. You want to know why? Because what we did is just pour the foundation. Next time I have you back, I want to break down. See, there's so many. I got to hold up your book again. Supernatural Cryptids, Return of the Nephilim. So, what's so important about this book is it pours the foundation of the questions of why we have Bigfoot, why we have aliens, why we have dogmen, fairies, whatever. There's so much different types of information in here. And then next time, David, when we have you back, I want to talk about these actual creatures in your book. I want to talk about the Ohio Howler, the mother of all beasts. I want to talk about the fairy descriptions because a lot of that correlates, even the bluish tint color, grayish blue color, correlates to what I've seen. I want to talk about Dogman. There's so much stuff in your book. All the ghouls came out for Halloween Bash. Oh my
mm.
gosh. I'm just looking at all of this information. I'm sorry, I got to keep going here for a minute because I love this book.
Yeah, read
Giant
some of them
newspapers
chapter
and
headings, why don't
articles.
you?
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. All right, brother. We're gonna wrap it up. There is I my mind was blown. You have friends who are also talked about in this book. You had kind of a team, a group of guys. How many guys?
Yeah, I had. Well, let's see. I had three guys. That would be Kane Michael, Jody Cook, and my co-author, which most of the pictures and videos and he has footprints, foot tracks, a plaster, not plaster, but what he calls hydrocalcast of these entities. And the pictures on his section three, he has I think there's 9 or 10 pages he's actually taking these pictures, and one of them actually went number one on Dead Net Studios on YouTube in the entire United States. It was a number one authentic picture. So
And that's
yeah,
what's
it's just a one of a kind book. Also Linda Sigmund, powerful, one of the very few survivors of they actually had the Mothman experience.
oh
And,
my.
and it's a story now. We got to touch on Linda Sigmund's story, and I want to also touch on Matt Imp's story. He was face to face with the dog man and lived to tell about it.
Okay, brother, then that's what we're going to do. We're going to wrap it up today. But then our next episode together, we're going to do a breakdown of all these specific sightings, the eyewitnesses involved, what happened. I mean, you've got amazing tree structure pictures. You have pictures of actual creatures in these books. I mean, people, you got to get this book. David, where can they get this book? Amazon?
Yeah, you can really go on any social media platform. We're talking Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Walmart websites, just to name a few. There's several different other ones I found it on. It's being sold everywhere. It's even right now, there's a copy of it, or I should say several copies of it, over in Germany. It's across the
Wow.
pond. I actually talked to the librarian over there himself, and he was just so excited to have that book. He's just going off and telling me this and telling me that, and he's talking to me so much. We rung up a big phone bill, and I had to pay it.
Fantastic, brother. Yeah, and I'm just telling people to go buy it. You got pictures of the ghost cat in here. You've got actual pictures of dogmen, Bigfoot. Oh my God, I gotta throw a bone to people here real quick. Check out this picture of a dog man right
That's
there.
it. That's the number one picture.
So that's the reason why you want to get this book, people. Um, hey, David. So Amazon, where can people get a hold of you? Let's wrap it up.
They can go on my website, that's supernaturalcryptids.com. And I also, in my book, I have my phone number there. I don't care. I've had people call me up at 3 o'clock in the morning wanting to talk about Bigfoot. and,
Awesome.
and and I don't care because it's my favorite subject. Obviously, it's my passion, and God, my number one passion. But this Bigfoot and stuff like that. It's a hobby. Some people take it really serious, and they make they criticize others. They make fun. They try to steal people's evidence and everything like that. I like to try to have fun with it. I said, if you can't have fun with this subject, you can't have no fun.
Amen, brother. Yeah, that's it, man. We got to have fun. We want to keep it entertaining, but then there are also some scary out encounters out there where people have been shook. Their life has been changed, and so we want to be there for those people as well to help
Exactly.
diffuse it, so they're able to live productive, normal. Because, when I heard those howls out there last week, it shook me to the core, but I've still got to get up the next day and go to work. I got to put food on the table for my family, and that's what this is all about, man. It's about supporting one another and the things that are happening in our lives. All right, David, thank you so much. We're going to have you back again where we're going to do a breakdown of all these different creatures. Thanks for being on. I'm going to put you backstage. I'll see you in a minute. All right?
All right, buddy.
All right, everybody. There you have it. I've been thinking about this guy ever since I met him, going through his book. And so we finished two stages. We finished the introduction first episode. Now this episode was pouring the foundation. And now the next episode we have with author David Walker is we're going to get to some of these specific details in the book. So if you want to stay tuned in, man, get this book so you can read along with us and be aware of what's going on in the next episode that's to come with author David Walker. The Supernatural Cryptids Return of the Nephilim. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to another episode of the Bigfoots of America podcast show, and we'll see you next time.